Dante and a damned dozen have found a place of relative safety in an unfamiliar world, along with allies. As for what to do next, they needed to plan that out. They walked past a few narrow buildings and remnants of narrow buildings before they came across a tall, large enough building to house all 15 of them. Amir told them that they're ready. With the curtains on the window removed, the smoke has an exit. This was a relief for Rodia. She thought that they would have to shudder themselves to sleep with the soaking wet firewood. Surprised that it would work. Amir told her that they had to get a small fire going underneath it until the wood dried up and caught fire. The downside was all that smoke. Otis understood that she had some field experience. Don Quixote wanted to do something, so she told Rodia to bring her ingredients. She'll make a pot of special fixer soup. Amir didn't know what to think about a soup made from cookies and jelly. Sinclair refused to allow that, not since Chapter 3.5 in District 11. Yi Sang, while he had a level of interest, witnessing others vomit due to agony in their stomachs upon eating her dishes, it's best to do that in a safer environment. Rodia reminded her that they agreed to leave the cooking to Masot and, well, either him or Otis. Dante asked if that was so. Gregor said that this was an unspoken rule after everything that happened. Masot and Otis were the only two that got even remotely positive reviews. Yeah. Masot is a French stereotype, and Otis had the idea that worked. The idea that reversed the distortion of Papa Bongi. While Don Quixote was the queen of cordon bleu. Sinclair was hoping that they'd get to try Otis cooking. She didn't see any reason to do so, as they have plenty of high-calorie foods like cookies and jelly. Amir was glad that everyone was still energetic, given the circumstances, which wasn't easy when waking up in an unfamiliar environment. Dante told her that they were quite used to getting thrown into unfamiliar places. They then asked if she was able to reach her colleagues. She shook her head, suspecting that they've either lost their comm devices, or they've run into some other trouble. Dante asked if they might be in any danger. Amir was sure that the Doctor and Dr. Kalsit are both capable enough to handle themselves. Then Yi Sang wanted to know this. Corporations are, by their nature, organizations in pursuit of profit. Yet their activities resemble that of a charity organization, as opposed to a pharmaceutical company. What explains this blurred distinction? Honglu wanted to know as well. How is Rhode Island helping people? Dante understood that this brought back unpleasant memories in Honglu. Horrible experiments seen through flowing tears in the face of suffering. This was the embodiment of greed that left a terrible wound in Honglu. The moral decay that his grandmother and older sister represented, where experimentation on the convicted was seen as acceptable, and the head, as long as the taxes kept flowing in and no non-humans were made, they wouldn't brutally slaughter them. Where pharmaceutical companies obsessed with profits over the capacity to heal. K-Corp certainly did so. When when they used a human transformed by a wish from the founder of the current K-Corps into one whose tears were the basis of their singularity. Her successor using torturous images to make more tears. H-Corp tormented prisoners for years, not just to test new boluses, but also to entertain the elders, who were more trouble than they were worth, those sadists. Amir told them that many in Terra suffered from a disease which crystallized the victim, which spreads deeper into the infected's internal organs, eventually killing them. This was called oropathy. The back of her right hand had obsidian crystallizations. It reminded Dante of the biotreatments from the back streets of District 8, but this was more restless and sinister. She continued by saying that it's a terrible, painful disease that has no recorded cases of full recovery. Amia either had some kind of pain relief or she just has a high pain tolerance. But according to Amia, that wasn't the worst problem. Don Quixote wanted to know what's worse than that. Amia made it clear that it's what happens in their world as well, although there are efforts to combat it. It happens in our world as well. Discrimination. On Terra, it varies between regions regarding the infected. Yi Sang saw that those that suffer from oropathy must face unfair treatment. Amia mentioned that some are quarantined in places with terrible, inhumane conditions. Massacres have been reported. Ortiz wanted to know if oropathy was highly contagious. Amia says no. At least not by physical contact, as long as the infected are alive, but upon death the crystal growths decay and turn to dust, scattering. That spreads the disease. Ortiz understood that as long as she's not in a situation where she's at risk of death, Amia is not a risk to them. Sinclair asked what the problem was. Gregor understood that they were already past caring what the problem was. Bad feelings can make logic seem irrelevant. Dante understood that Rhodes Island's goal has to be... Amia finished that by saying that it's to develop a cure for oropathy. But they also need to change the circumstances for the better for the infected. Honglu didn't see that as easy, but that's why their effort has more meaning. He hopes that she can achieve it. Don Quixote cried out at such altruism. Gregor saw the city, the world that they came from, and the world that they're in were both full of surprises. Amia wanted to know what their world was like, specifically the city. Dante had to think about this. It was the kind of place with too many pointless rules, which might as well be vindictive pronouncements. The place where, the moment you think, isn't this too much? Something worse happens. And they've probably only seen a fraction of it. They couldn't see a single positive thing about the city. The damned dozen agreed, as most of what came after was quite scathing. Ishmael saw it as a place where good deeds rarely go unpunished, where sympathy will get you stabbed in the back. Nothing good works out there. Heathcliff spoke 4 simple words that sum it up nicely. It's a Sinclair, likely speaking of how N-Corp hunted down prosthetic users because of some deranged belief in purity, saw it as an irrational place full of absurdities. Well, N-Corp did kill his family. Personally, I consider it to be a place where hell can't be imagined to be much worse. Mossot saw absurdity as an omnipresence. It shouldn't be focused on too much or in simple terms. Because for them, it's practically Tuesday. Rodia saw that they at least recognize that it exists. It's all that can be done. Mossot saw it as better to experience more and acclimatize rather than complaining. It will appear whether they wanted to or not. Sinclair remembered him saying something like that last time. Mossot had nothing more to say. The soured mood was broken by Don Quixote. She disliked the regular occurrence of bad people committing bad deeds. Then she spoke of fixers of justice! And as she was saying this, she jumped from her seat and passionately shook her fist, which resulted in a heavy crack and the sound of small pebbles tumbling down. Amia warned Don Quixote to watch out. The wall had a hole that she made, and an Aegir appeared and stared back at her. She was eating something out of a can while reading a book. After a brief silence, Don Quixote greeted this Aegir. Rodia was annoyed, telling her to apologize first. Heathcliff was angered at her being too hyper that day. Don Quixote nervously apologized as she didn't expect that wall to be so weak, asking if the Aegir girl was hurt. She said to Don Quixote, wanted to know, to what? She told her to forget the apology, wanting to know what happens next. The fixers of justice rose up to do what? Now this caught Don Quixote's attention, asking if she wanted to hear the tale of fixers. Amia didn't know about her coming to them, considering that Don Quixote punched the wall down. Don Quixote had no answer to that. The Aegir girl thought it was too late, willing to wait until morning if they want to sleep. Yes, if it was too late, they can sleep and wait until morning. Don Quixote didn't see it as late at all, seeing it as quite early, telling her to sit down. Otis was at this, telling her to calm down and reminding her that she doesn't know who this Aegir girl is. Also telling her to share those fixer tales in the corner to not disturb their sleep. Don Quixote saw this as unreasonable. Those tales deserve to be announced loudly. This girl agreed, but they should properly introduce themselves to each other first. She was Mares. The village chief was her grandfather. This surprised Gregor. Yisang didn't see her before. Rodia agreed. She thought that young blood wasn't there. Dante saw that there wasn't anyone that could be considered young there. Mares thought that he was worried about nothing. Apparently, there was a fear of the dangers that outsiders posed. Faust saw that they didn't give full faith to their saviors. Otis understood that there are some things that couldn't be shared even with those that they trusted with their life. She would like to know why. Rodia thought that there was a bunch of children who were stuck indoors in that village. Mares told them that no others around her age in that village were there at all. Sinclair understood why the chief was overprotective. Rodia then announced that their turn. Mares heard enough to get an idea. Heathcliff was surprised that she did. Don Quixote asked how she did that. Did she have a listening device? Mares tapped a side of what was left of the wall, smiling ironically. She explained that it was because of bad soundproofing. She could hear everything that Don Quixote practically sang during the day. This made Don Quixote feel awkward, yet she wasn't that embarrassed. Gregor wanted her to actually feel embarrassed for once. Mares thought that it was good enough for self-introductions. She wanted to hear more fixer tales, those who bring justice to the evils of the city. She needed little encouragement to do so, so Don Quixote did, starting with the Red Mist. Ah yes, that one. She was strong enough to fight the same Arbiter, Guardian, that wiped out almost all of the Kong family in District 8 after fighting many abnormalities and 2 claws while missing an arm. And even that was a draw, as they took each other out. Heathcliff didn't think that there would be any hope for a good night's sleep. Sinclair asked if he usually passed out within a minute of his back resting, no matter how noisy things were. This annoyed Heathcliff, asking if he takes him for a hibernating bear? Even if he had trouble sleeping when there's noise all over, and then he quickly fell asleep. Ishmael considered the bear in hibernation metaphors quite apt. Sinclair saw that he slept before any of them. Others started to fall asleep as well. Massot did so according to his routine. Faust laid claim to one of the few available cloth sheets as soon as the close of business for the day was confirmed. The same applies to those that searched for Dante in that unfamiliar land, slowly falling asleep as well. Don Quixote then continued to speak of fixers, specifically a fixer of the Zwei Association Section 1. It's unclear which direction that they're from. Dante saw that Don Quixote kept speaking with no signs of fatigue, hoping that she didn't do this until morning. This was impressive to Mayers. Dante noticed that she was having fun. Amia, during this, approached Dante. She thought that the city seemed to be teeming with fixers of justice and exhilarating tales of adventures, asking if they experienced them themselves. Fixers are soldiers of fortune that are as common in that world as retail workers are in ours. They did what they did for honor in the past, as far as 200 years ago, but in more recent times, they now fight for greed. Idealists like the Red Mist, they were quite rare. Ishmael said no. Those stories usually were those of other people. Amia saw that she was telling them with such vigor that it almost sounds like she was there herself. Ishmael admitted that some of them were retellings of her own personal experiences. Dante understood that she was thinking back to the plays that they were made to watch back in La Mancha Land. The other tales were likely what Don Quixote committed to memory from the books that she read when forced to be a shut-in within that lighthouse for 200 years, along with fixers of, well, issues of Fixer Monthly that gave her more up-to-date information. Gregor was struggling to find the words, that he said that even if those stories were partially true, it shows how ridiculous the city can be. They wouldn't need fixers of justice if they really lived in such a just world. A good place to live would be quiet and peaceful without someone trying to force it. Yeah, that world was one that was built around social Darwinism, cruelty, and self-interest. Amia saw that as true, as her world isn't perfect either. She hopes that one day Rhodes Island could be a normal pharmaceutical company. Mares then looks like she was thinking about something. Gregor noticed this, and Dante asked what was wrong. Gregor thought that Mares made eye contact with him. Dante suspected that she was overhearing their conversation. All they saw was Mares excitedly reacting to Don Quixote's tales. Mares wanted to know what happened then. Don Quixote spoke of how Urtis was bold towards the soldiers. They stood in the way. Likely what she spoke to the Shi family mercenaries when they were fighting their way through their enemies in District 8. How their master was unworthy. They can't even speak of their name. She wanted to educate them on. Otis wasn't happy about the alterations to the story. She jumped up to her feet and shouted angrily that she's feeding her. Ooh. She never said anything like that. Don Quixote made it clear that certain aspects of that retelling might be exaggerated. Mayors understood it can be dry if too realistic. Not even a proper record or book remained once the profound silence swept through that village. So she craved stories like that. Amir made it clear that Iberia didn't stop Iberians from emigrating, even considering the tight border controls. Have they thought about leaving? Mayors didn't think it'd be that simple, as to cross the border, they'd have to pass through larger cities that have, well, they're managed by the Inquisition. Otis noticed that they're not too fond of the Inquisition. Why was this? According to Mayors, that village was formed by people who grew tired of living under the Inquisition's rule. Sinclair, remembering N-Corp's Psycho Division, asked what kind of organization was this Inquisition. Dante saw that his face was cold upon hearing this. The traumas of Carl would never truly go away. Amir explained that it was, according to Dr. Kalstit, the Inquisition was what filled the power vacuum once Iberia fell into chaos. So some look for any voice that promises security and order, where the Inquisitors are the rapier and lamp-wielding protectors of Iberia's cities from lawlessness. Now, those lamps are not just for show. Sinclair thinks that it makes them look like good people. Mears sees them as that, but there's also the Church of the Deep. They'll go to great lengths to deal with instances relating to that group that worships the Seaborn. Don Quixote didn't like the idea of worshipping monsters. Well, quite ironic, as she was one herself. Just not a Seaborn. Otis, remembering the Nagel und Hammer and the Church of Gears, sees cultish fanaticism as a plague in both universes. Sinclair feeling that people with all kinds of wrong faiths and beliefs are so common. This is someone that was a victim of that. According to Mayors, the Seaborns are the ones that messed Iberia up, so it's okay for them to arrest anyone that appears even remotely connected to them. Well, at least the Inquisition believes that. Amir asked if she's saying that Iberia is like that because of the Seaborn. Gregor saw the Seaborn as troublesome to deal with, but they didn't seem that strong. Mayors told them that from what she's heard from her grandfather, the Inquisition executed many innocent people too in their crusade against the Church of the Deep. Don Quixote saw the hypocrisy in those that speak of being on the side of justice. Otis saw it as a reasonable policy decision, but it poses danger. Yes, it poses danger to the daily lives of citizens. She was apparently, Mayors was, the survivor, the only survivor of that kind of massacre. Everyone in her family died. Sinclair understood this better than anyone. Well, better than most of them anyway. Understanding that she had to desire to endure, such a long period of pain to be able to say something like that with such composure. Mayors told them that for the people of Iberia, they're heroes who will bring the land back to its glory days, but to her grandfather, they're oppressors making life difficult. It's why they came there, fleeing from the Inquisition's gaze. Don Quixote wanted to understand why they decided to settle at a place that's so wanting. Choosing her words carefully. Mare said, "Run down." Okay, that was as good as word as any as for the Don Quixote. Mares didn't think it was so bad once they got used to it. Besides, thanks to them, they have a new path. Dante didn't know what she meant. Mares understood that it was getting late, asking if they're repairing the ship the next day. Dante remarked that this place had no soundproofing. Mares found their talk to be good, hoping that they can do this the next day. She then went to her own room. The others, who were still up, lay on the hard stone floor with only a thin layer of cloth between it and their backs, in a world that was neither the city nor the outskirts. But their lives were just as difficult. The Inquisition, let's go for that, was once just a church. It filled the gap following one of the catastrophes. They're there to preserve order in Iberia while defending against the Seaborn, although some Iberians see them as negligent of their survival needs, while others just plain hate them for their persecution of the Aegir. Armed with rapiers, along with lanterns representing Iberia's light and hope, symbolizing its self-determination. Now, the lantern being an Originium art that repels Seaborn. They're also armed with a hand cannon that can wreak havoc, but it is difficult to control. So best used when they're close up to make sure that they actually hit the target. The next day on the coast, Dante saw the ship and it was so big. Amia saw the vessel and she didn't know that there were any remaining vessels of that class in Iberia. Don Quixote saw the name of the vessel, Rebellion de las Masas. Yi sang translating this as Revolt of the Masses, a name mired in peculiarity. Honglu was fond of the size of the boat, the same size as the boat he had at home. Ishmael, the skilled sailor, quickly told them that size alone didn't make it special at the Great Lake, but it was big compared to Mephistopheles in boat mode, or even the Indigo Elder's skiff. Dante thought that the ship was the size of Mephistopheles at most, asking if they're sure that they can get it fixed in a day or two. Otis reminded them that most of the more time-consuming repairs were done by the villagers. They just needed to do the repairs that the villagers couldn't, due to their lack of knowledge of how to do so, specifically with a few components that actually made it able to move. Faust made it clear that unless parts unfamiliar to her were also malfunctioning, such as the core engine, the rest of the repair should be sufficiently managed. Dante was oddly unsettled as they looked at the ship. Despite the assurances, they felt that they shouldn't linger there for too long. Dante advised them to be thorough. They'd rather not sit on a sinking ship again. The Great Lake was experienced enough of that. That was when they were at the coast before they entered the Great Lake proper due to the Mola bootworks in Chapter 4.5 not getting the submarine function right. Faust told them not to worry. Unlike Mephistopheles, most functions of that vessel, such as buoyancy gear, propellers, steering gear, are all operational. The repair was much easier than it was with Mephistopheles. Gregor saw this as confidence enough. It should be safe this time around. Amia then asked if they're taking that rope to climb up to the ship. Ishmael saw a lift-like apparatus down there. It should take them up. Faust verified its stability, suggesting that they board the lift. Dante was less than convinced, asking if she was 100% certain. Amia found this amusing. She saw that the boat was afloat and won't be sinking anytime soon. Dante cynically thought that would be nice. Heathcliff asked if they were just going to stand there. They're heading up there now. Dante told them that they're going with them. They then headed to the vessel's bridge and was greeted by the extravagant interior that was as gaudy as its exterior. So like a certain tower in New York, except much more tasteful. Rudyard didn't think that it was real gold, but it still looked shiny. She felt excited by her surroundings. Ryushu said AS. Sinclair translated this as aesthetically satisfying. She saw it as too ostentatious, not quite her style. This is from someone that made artwork that was so horrifying that it shocked a Haishu of the Mao branch, one that's no stranger to violence. Don Quixote liked this vessel, while Mephistopheles was quite excellent. They could have many adventures on one so lavishly decorated. Faust and Ortis worked on one of the control panels, as Ishmael walked up to another and interfaced with it, before seeing that it's working fine. She deduced that this was either an investigative or research vessel, if a bit extravagant, seeing coordinates updating in real time. Ortis saw that they were set to somewhere in the middle of the ocean, possibly pointing to a small islet. Mares denied this. She appeared so suddenly that she surprised Heathcliff, commenting on her stealth skills. Dante was also surprised that she was there. Mares asked if they were surprised. She did ask if that boat would be fixed that day. Sinclair didn't know that she'd be there. Ortis wanted to know why the coordinates were set to that location. Mares explained that there are several undersea cities beneath those coordinates, known as Aegir, her grandfather's home. This satisfied Faust regarding the coordinates. Yisang wanted to know why this was. Faust understood why them repairing the ship was enough to earn their trust and to be seen as saviors. Heathcliff wanted to know what she was on about. Faust then explained that based on how the village was established, statements from the chief, along with what Mares told them, she can tell how significant the repair of that vessel it was to them. She saw the sequence of logical conclusions posing a challenge for Heathcliff to comprehend, seeing it as inefficient to attempt to explain this in simpler terms. Heathcliff was this close to skull-smashing time. Yisang worriedly asked him to stop. He'll explain it. Heathcliff was wondering when Faust was going to speak like that, asking what she's on about. This was enough to stop him from inflicting blood-force trauma. Yisang saw that the food supply situation was quite dire, as they only had dried food, most of it made from long-term storage. Made for long-term storage purposes. Ishmael, seeing that from what Skadi said about the coastal areas, how dangerous they were, the dried food was not likely to be from around there. This is considering that the coastal mudflats of District 21 had trash crabs that, while dangerous, could be hunted for scrap, and their meat was edible, barely, and their brains could be turned into alcohol. Amir saw that the food that they packed might have been when they first came to Faro Moreto. Dante saw that the villagers were armed and those sea terrors weren't that formidable, but in their current state they aren't going to have an easy time repelling them. Yisang agreed. That brings them to sustenance. Heathcliff understood the situation better. Those two are visiting their home to get food supplies from there to feed the villagers, where they're more likely to help their own kind. Amir understood that They're not just repairing the ship, but their food supply too. Then she said, she asked what was wrong. Dante was unsure how to put this. Heathcliff understood the situation in a crude way. Was mildly surprising to the others. Heathcliff asked why they were looking at him like that. Then he realized why, and he was asking if they think that he's that dim-witted. Ryushu thought that he got it. Dante told him that it was a while since he showed that side of himself. Heathcliff's intuition was always excellent. He put together surprisingly accurate conclusions quickly. Sinclair told him that it was kind of his whole fault for... Then Heathcliff decided to attack him, narrowly missing. He believed that he was softer than him lately, telling him to get back there. While they were distracting each other, Otis asked Mayers if he was correct. Mayers was surprised. He got it right. Food was running low. They're unlikely to last another year. She's sure that the Aegir will welcome them with open arms. Amir worries, asks if they... she won't ask if they're going to welcome the others too. The rest didn't appear to be Aegir. Mayors believe that they would. Iberia suspects and hates the Aegir for no other reasons that they're from the sea. But she didn't think that things deteriorated so much that they'd abandon a group of starving land dwellers, implying that the Aegir weren't as xenophobic as Iberia. Don Quixote, no stranger to persecution, seeing that she's a blood fiend, asked who the Aegir were. Yisang initially thought that it was a region, but it seems like an affiliation of sorts. Sinclair thought that they were like nest dwellers, although he didn't hear of a nest accepting Backstreet's people with open arms. Rodia thinking that they used to be rich people. Heathcliff thought that if this was the case, is Amia Aegir too? Amia wasn't sure what they meant, asking if they didn't distinguish between races in their world. Faust denied this, as they do distinguish between races. Dante remembering the cuckoo spawn in Honglu's memories, and they met the gnomes and the monster Santata in the Outskirts. Faust made it clear that only humans were allowed in the city, leaving out the part that any non-human sapiens, organic or synthetic, would be hunted down quickly. Amir told them that the people of Terra have slightly varying appearances depending on their race, like her tortoise ears. Mare spoke of her pointed ears as she's Aegir. Don Quixote understood this, although she struggled to speak what she meant. Massot understood and told them that the closest example in their world were, blood fiends. They look similar to humans and have the same kind of nature and sapience. Don Quixote added that blood fiends were ostracized due to their nature that makes coexistence with humans difficult. It might be that Aegir also. Okay, I doubt that, as the blood fiends are treated like that because they are predators, feasting on human blood. Although they likely don't stand out that much in District 23, where it's actually socially acceptable. As for what Amia has to say, she sees that some possesses qualities that make coexistence difficult, but that's probably rare. Don Quixote wanted to know why they're seen as objects of suspicion and hatred. Amia struggled to put this into words. Gregor saw that the language, specifically the terminology, was new, but the idea was familiar to them. Those from fallen wings, such as himself, those born in the backstreets, Heathcliff and Rodia, people who have replaced their body parts with prosthetics, Sinclair's family, as well as Moses the distortion detective, and himself with biomimetic augmentations. Yisang saw that as the form differed, but the essence remains the same. It wasn't just Don Quixote that could see this. Different worlds, similar ideas of persecuting those seen as wrong. Then Mayers told them that they did good fixing that ship. She wanted to move on from those gloomy conversations, wanting to show them the good parts of the ship. Faust then told her that the ship tour would have to wait. The repairs were almost complete, but an issue has arisen. This was worrying to Mayers, as it was to Sinclair, and Amir noticed the problem, identifying multiple life forms ahead, a sea terror horde. Faust saw that the radar indicated that they were surrounded. Dante recognized them as the same monsters from yesterday. Urtis wanted them to order them to prepare for battle, then asking if they're the sea terrors that they encountered. Gregor saw that they looked different, but they were sea terrors. Ishmael saw that they have greater numbers, but if the last fight told them anything, they should be able to handle this. Dante asked Amir to support them in battle like yesterday. Don Quixote asked if Mayers can fight. She implied that she can't, feeling that she'd get in the way. Dante told them to find a place to keep Mayers safe. Then they should hurry down there and prevent the sea terrors from damaging the ship. They then fought them, which were a little more varied than the last group, not just deep sea sliders, but also shell sea runners. They have the same weaknesses as the other kind of seaborne, but can only inflict sinking, and one attack increases clash power if enough is on the target and more is inflicted. More sinking is inflicted if it's not already on the target. Now, the other kind of seaborne is the basic Sea Reaper. They're a lot tougher, weak to gloom but strong against physical, wrath, lust and envy. It gains final power depending on the sinking on the targets, and at 50% or less HP, the coins are all unbreakable. The attacks inflict sinking and nervous impairment. Thankfully, it starts at a standby state and will only counter at first, so it's possible to just ignore that one and focus on the others. It will only use other attacks after using the counter, and then all enemies get free nervous impairments, if they have less than 15. Min-max speed goes up by 3, and 1 offense level up will be gained by it for every 10% missing HP, up to 8. The Neversea brand grants it 2 more final power and coin power, also doubling the amount of nervous impairment inflicted. After that battle, Amir saw that the remaining entities had all returned to sea, asking if everyone was okay. It was like their last skirmish. The sea terrors that had surrounded the ship returned to sea even before the battle ended. The retreat felt too orderly and deliberate to be just running away. It was almost like a tactical retreat. Yeah, that was suspicious, I admit. Rodier told her that they were doing fine, then asked Faust about the ship. Faust saw that there was minor damage to the hull, but nothing that would make the ship unable to go anywhere, which was a relief for Dante. Sinclair noticed during the battle, hoping that he was wrong. Towards the end of the battle, they were going for Dante. Ishmael saw that he might be right, as they likely realized that Dante was commanding the rest of them. Yisang saw their movements as fluid and adaptable, as though they were learning their behavior. Sinclair asked why the Church of the Deep worships monsters like them. Heathcliff believed that it was because they're all gone mental. Mares was sure that they had many reasons, but the Seaborn were beings of infinite potential. There's no word big enough to properly convey the scale. They endlessly evolve and adapt. Every time they encounter a new environment or a new element, they transform themselves and other Seaborn, seeing that as possibly their draw. While Yisang saw the fascination from a researcher as fitting, turning it into idolatry is not entirely positive. Ishmael wasn't comfortable with them, likely being reminded of whales and mermaids. Honglu believed that they might learn a language to communicate with them. Dante struggled to believe that to be possible. Honglu thought that they sounded smart based on what they heard. This surprised Mayors, who heard of Seaborn that could talk. Urtis was cynical. If non-humans speak the language of humans, regardless of if it means intelligence, she could only think of two possibilities: to communicate with humans or to deceive humans. Ishmael understood it to... well, it was more often the latter. Dante asked about distortions. Some of them know how to speak. Faust reminded them that distortions are where humans transform into monstrous forms, which was first observed after the White Nights and Dark Days incident. Seeing this as irrelevant to what Urtis spoke of, this was what was whispered about by Mayors. Dante noticed this. The joy in her voice was noticeable. She asked if that pillar of light in the city really... Yisang well... He asked how she knew of this. Before she could say how, Heathcliff understood it was because Don Quixote told her. Roger spoke of her talking non-stop about all kinds of stories all morning. Don Quixote denied getting to that part. Urtis berated Don Quixote for getting lost in her own stories when she spoke of what might be company secrets. She denied speaking of company secrets. While this was going on, Amio was staring towards the sea, worried that the sea terrors might start crawling to the surface once again. Before turning towards them, who asked which of the two Seaborn were, Mayors saw that their sense of self was faint, so it's neither, implying that they have a hive mind, although it's possible that they learned human language out of instinct, as it might help them survive. Yisang saw that she was quite the expert on that subject. She knows about them much that goes beyond fear for her survival might... well, what that might yield. Asking if she worships them. She denied worshipping them. They don't have hopes or wishes, just a desire for survival. Sinclair asked if that means that they have the capacity to hope. Mayors thought that it might be so. Yisang asked if that was so. Faust then said that the repairs are complete, saying this as she carried the set of tools borrowed from the village. Dante was guessing that nothing else needed to be done, and Faust confirmed this. The ship was ready. Urtis asked if a departure time and date was in mind. She would prefer it to be soon. Mayors didn't have a set time, but it would need to be late afternoon at the earliest. Sinclair was surprised that it would be that soon. Mayors told them that they don't have a lot to bring with them, laughing briefly, then asked how far out do they need to go. Dante said that they needed to head to the dimensional door. Amia could see it's a light that can be visible from the beach at night. It was strong enough to break the sea fog. They should be able to determine its location somewhere in the coastal waters. Heathcliff asked if they can go back that night. Faust she then told them that they must first inform the villagers. Dante agreed. They should head back to the village. things are going to get much more complicated in the next part of this lore breakdown. Until next time, hail the rabbit!